You're listening to the House Hacking Podcast, the blueprint for one of the best financial life hacks there is. House hacking. If you are looking to get ahead financially or learn about the easiest way to get started with real estate investing, then you are in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of individuals from all walks of life that use house hacking to eliminate their housing costs and accelerating their path to financial independence. Your number one place for all things house hacking.
Dana, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so excited. Ever since I heard about you and Hemlane about 6-7 months ago, I've been wanting to get you on the show. So thank you for taking the time to come on. I mean, how you doing and where are you calling in from?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Thanks for having me on the show today. I'm calling in from San Francisco, California. One of probably the few left here that they say based on what the news is reporting of people leaving San Francisco. But I'm still here, and the team is here, and we're doing great.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. So, we really brought you on to highlight your company as a property management solution for folks. But really, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what you guys offer, I want folks to, know more about you and your company. And I mean, you just have a damn impressive resume. I mean, you did your undergrad, you did an MBA at Harvard, you were at Skype, then you were at Norton, you did time at Apple, at Nest, and then you co-founded Hemlane in 2015. I mean, how'd you end up deciding to start a property management software tech company?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as far as as starting a company, I was always passionate about building things. I was the person in organizations where startups loved it, but I felt like corporations were like, this is a little bit too much. Where I'd always come in and say, well, why do we do things that way? Well, why don't we build it this way? I always asked those questions. And so I never actually thought I would start a company. It wasn't on my 5 to 10 year roadmap. But an opportunity arose, right time, right place. I got really lucky where we had an awesome idea. I had a great technical co-founder. My co-founder, Frank, is the best of the best, I would say, from a product perspective. And then it kind of led into starting a company. People ask, oh, did you dream to be a CEO? I think back to that day when Frank and I were like, well, should you be CEO or should I be CEO? It wasn't one of those things where I had said, this is exactly the path for me. But the puzzle pieces all kind of just came together. And now we're super excited about what we're doing. It was obviously a long journey to get there. Anyone who started a company or even those in real estate, it looks great, and then you start it and you realize how much work it is. So now we're super excited about where we are and what we've built. But we definitely went through those years of building and a lot of work behind it to get to where we are today.
Awesome. And did either you or Frank have any real estate investing background, or did you just sort of say, hey, we see this as an issue because we know people in the industry? Or, tell us a little bit about that. And did you actually start Hemlane as Hemlane, or was there a pivot or two in there to sort of get to where you're at now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Anyone who started a company will tell you the only way to make it successful in that sense is to pivot. And I think pivot might be a negative word. It's more of listening to your customers and building what they want. You know what the problem is, but a lot of times you don't know exactly what the solution is until you really have the details. And become a subject matter expert. So to answer your question, Andrew, on did either one of us have experience in real estate? We both did, right? So my family had real estate investments out of state. We're in California, investments in Denver. And then on top of that, my co-founder, Frank, he has properties here in San Francisco, or property in San Francisco, I should say. And then out-of-state investments over in Florida, Georgia, actually closer to you, Andrew. And that's really where Hemlane, where we started thinking about how could we provide better resources for the real estate investor themselves. And how did we make it where it was something in the market that was a new solution? Because we knew the solutions in the market didn't serve us. They weren't great solutions for people like us. How do we find a better way to provide property management to other real estate investors? And when I say real estate investors, I mean the small guys, the people who own 4 rental units, 10 rental units. You don't have to have 1,000+ units to be considered a real estate investor.
Yeah. So, I mean, was it really born out of this idea of out-of-state investors? Because, I mean, your family's experience was not there. Frank's, one was in the city, but it was sort of remote. And a lot of the other property management software is geared towards these small mom and pop landlords or the folks that have 2, 5, 10 properties. Really, I look at as are geared for properties in your backyard or a short drive away. Not, you get a red eye from, San Francisco to Florida or Georgia to be there for an issue that came up.
Yeah, it was both. It wasn't necessarily built just for out-of-state investors, but really for the investor who said, I still want to control my net operating income. In other words, like I want rent directly to me. I want to control expenses, understand every single expense going through the system, figure out ways to optimize. Like I can do that myself. My real estate investments, but I don't want to have to be doing the day-to-day calls and the administration that bears me down, so I don't want to buy another investment property. What we heard from a lot of friends of ours in building Hemlane was the exact frustration we were experiencing, where it's like, oh, I want to buy another property, but like, gosh, having a call at 6 p.m. for plumbing on a Sunday night, right? Or having to go to a showing on Saturdays. It was one of those things where it's like, if I add another property, that's just more work in my free time. But then every friend we spoke to said the exact same thing. Oh, well, I don't want a full service property manager because that's not what I want to do. I want to be in control. And then we realized there's nothing out there. There's do-it-yourself software or full service property management, but there's no in-between solution. Why isn't there? And so it was really building to that need. And what's interesting is most of Hemlane's clients are actually people who live near their property in driving distance, right? But they say, hey, I don't really want to have to do everything administratively because I have a 9-to-5 job. It is stressful. Then I have my family. I don't have to work outside of the office. And so that was really how we developed Hemlane. A lot of people at the beginning said, oh, well, you're trying to take over what property managers do. And it was like, well, no, because property managers use Hemlane. And on top of that, if someone wants a full service manager, they'll go to them. But 72% of real estate investors self-manage their properties. So 72% are not using a property manager. And that was actually a lot of our target market of when we were talking to them. They were saying, oh, we really hate the administration associated with owning a rental property. Yet they still were not willing to jump and take the leap into having a full service property manager. So how did we change that mindset and allow them to experience something different that was better for them and built for them?
Awesome. I mean, and you sort of honed in on one of the things I wanted to touch on next was like, who is the ideal real estate investor that's going to use Hemlane? And it sounds like it's not someone that is the full do-it-yourselfer, but doesn't want to turn everything over to a property manager and sort of wants that control, that sort of nice in-between. Is that right?
Well, we built it for also the do-it-yourselfer in this sense. We built a software, think of like Cozy on steroids, where it's like the software, and it automates as much as possible, but then you still get the repair calls. You still have to do all the follow-ups. You do all the showings yourself. We do have that software offering, but it's one of those things where the reason we built it was to say, okay, then if you do go on vacation or you're out and you do want something else, you can just upgrade to get a better experience. So we did definitely build the software portion, but you are 100% correct, Andrew. Our goal was never to like recreate Buildium or recreate Appfolio. You know, being an innovator, it was one of those things where that to me just sounded like, oh gosh, that sounds like going into like a corporate world where you're just doing things because you're told to do them rather than doing something because it's different. So yeah, I would say is a big distinction, even though we still offer a software only component.
Awesome. And then what about like from a real estate investor, you know, basically the person that's going to use Hemlane? I mean, is this someone that, you know, the ideal user is 2 properties, 10 properties, 50, 100? You know, would I want to jump on Hemlane when I get my first property, or sort of where's that sort of sweet spot for folks to think about? You know, they're listening and they're saying, look, I need property management software. I need to stop collecting checks myself and putting stuff in Excel. You know, what's that sweet spot right there?
Yeah, so it's definitely exactly what you said. If someone's questioning that, definitely jump on Hemlane. But our average real estate investor on Hemlane has anywhere between 8 or 9 properties. It fluctuates. It's somewhere right in between there. However, a lot of people come to us when they have one rental property and they say, I don't want to learn the operations side. I don't want to know where to list my property, how to do the background and credit check, how to make those decisions. I want you to do them. So I'll even start with just the software component. So we definitely get the ones and twosies. What's interesting is we never originally built Hemlane for any real estate investor with over 250 rental properties. We said, there's software out there. There's Appfolio, there's Yardi, there's other places you can go for that. What was really interesting about it is now our customers have grown with us. And so we've had customers who started with us with 4 rental properties, and now they're in multifamily and they're suddenly purchasing properties that get them at the 200 plus. Oh, wow. And they're asking for more enterprise features. And that's actually exciting for us because 1, it shows that we've helped them become successful. But 2, it's actually a really complex question to answer. It's almost like we have to build Excel for property management. And what I mean by that is Excel is something that's easy to use. If you've never used Excel, you can go in there and pretty quickly figure out how to do 2 + 2 = 4. But Excel is also for the power user, which is why so many people love and swear by Excel. If you want to do regression modeling, you can go into Excel and do so many complex features, but those things are not discoverable by the average Excel user. Yeah. And so now we really think about that when we design Hemlane. How do we make it so simple and easy for our initial target customer, who's still our target customer, of the person who has, you know, just picked up 4 rental properties, rental units. But then how do we make it so complex by the time that you grow, we don't have to kick you off the platform and tell you, please go somewhere else. And part of the reason for that was we were starting to tell our customers when they got to 100 units, here's some other software to use, please go to them. And they would come back to us and say, well, we don't want to go to them. Yeah. We like Hemlane, so why would we jump off your platform? And I was like, okay, well, maybe we need some more accounting features for you. Maybe we need this and that. And so now we've started to build those enterprise features, still with the smaller investor in mind, where you can jump on and you don't need a 5-hour onboarding or have to pay any onboarding support just to learn how to use the software, which is what most of those competitors do. If you're targeting someone with 250 units, you have a minimum of $400 onboarding fee. You have these account managers and these complex meetings and to go over the training. It's like, well, we don't really want that. We want anyone to be able to jump on and use it. So that's a complex kind of question that I think our design team is having a lot of fun with.
Yeah, I got to tell you, though, for folks that will watch the video of this, you might have seen me shudder when she mentioned regression models. So I'm in the middle of an executive MBA program, and I just finished up a business analytics, and it was all statistics and regression modeling and advanced modeling, and oh my goodness, it was horrible. I hated every minute of it. So when you said it, I was just like, oh my goodness, like I had to learn all that advanced stuff in Excel. But I mean, one of the things you really sort of brought up here is you've sort of evolved over, you know, since you founded in 2015. I mean, this is sort of a good point to like, I want folks to understand that you're more than just a simple property management software. I mean, obviously you're a woman-founded, woman-run company. How many folks are you up to now? I mean, obviously it was you and Frank when you did the founding back in 2015. 5 years later, I mean, how's the company changed, and what's sort of the corporate culture like, as small or big as the company might be?
Yeah, it's still very family oriented. We think of ourselves like the Hemlane family. It's actually kind of interesting that it's been like that, but we've been fortunate because when we started, first we bootstrapped it. We had the luxury we didn't think anyone would believe in us. And so we had the luxury of just sitting there in Frank's apartment from, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. every night, just coding and designing things and getting customers and doing everything ourselves.
Awesome.
And then we brought on, and why I said family and we were fortunate, was we brought on basically to the founding team, and how we define that is like pre-venture capital funding. We brought on Frank and Ben, who are still with us today. And most of the team since that we've hired, everyone's been with us except for a couple of cases, someone leaving to start a company type thing. We've all been together. And so we've been through building it all the way from the start. And that's why it is very much of a family. And so Hemlane itself, like the core team, there's 14 of us today, with over 10,000 properties on the platform.
Awesome.
And then we have a lot of like third parties we work with, consultants, contractors, all sorts of other folks that help obviously with Hemlane. The biggest being our agents. We have a nationwide network of real estate agents who do the leasing, the showings, anything you need on the ground. So we definitely work with partners, which makes the team seem much larger. But the core team is 14 of us.
Cool. And is everyone there in the Bay Area?
No, we have two main offices. It's Bay Area and actually Calgary, Canada. We aren't in Calgary, but we actually built a team up there. There was a really good opportunity to hire some people up there, and so we took it, and we're really happy we did. Most people on the team are real estate investors, so they or came from property management, one or the other, and so they really understand and are passionate about exactly what we're doing.
Very cool. Very cool. And especially about 5% of our listeners are actually in Canada. So I love looking at those podcast stats. So I'm sure all the Canadians that were listening were like, yes. So cool.
Yeah, and we always say for support and sales, we always say, well, Canadians are always the nicest. So they're the people we should put in front of the customers.
Awesome. Well, next I want to really go through these sort of main, I guess we'll call them sort of 9 areas. And, we're not going to go super deep on all of them. But, when you look at any sort of review site on property management software, they sort of cover these 9 areas. So I want to give some folks that maybe are looking at a property management software or have one and sort of cover these 9 areas. That way they can sort of compare it to what they have or some other options out there. And the first one is property marketing. So what ability does Hemlane have for us to actually market our property when we have a unit? We just bought a property, or we came over to Hemlane and now we've got a unit that we need to rent. Is there any ability to do listings or create a little mini website for the property? Just explain what Hemlane is able to offer.
Yeah, so in summary, we have all of that. It starts with advertising your property to over 30 rental listing websites. The worst thing you could ever do is put your listing on Zillow and someone's checking Zumper, right? Like that's the worst thing you can do, because then you have no idea, well, is it because of my price or is it because people aren't viewing my listing? So we advertised to over 30 rental listing websites. Pretty sure Zillow did a paywall, actually to all 50 states in September, where they charge every property management software basically, or just tell the property management software customers, you have to come to Zillow if you want to list here. We're one of the few, if not, I think maybe we were the first one, I know, only one to actually sign a partnership with Zillow to make it where you could, when you swipe that on to Hemlane, you could, or on Hemlane to advertise, you can just click an upgrade and pay Zillow's fee to get it also listed on Zillow directly from there, because it was important for us that customers didn't use 2 platforms. Yeah. So we do that. There's also things like our Zumper integration goes to Facebook Marketplace, so we're always trying to figure out where is the consumer where are they looking and how do we make sure that we are listed there? So it starts with the advertising, but I think more important than that on the marketing side is communicating with the tenants. Making it super easy. Like, they don't read, they want all bullet points. So everything's in bullet points, right? If you have a long paragraph that says you have a washing machine in it, guarantee you're going to have a tenant question that. All the way to letting them know what their requirements are. You don't have to, but minimum credit score, we educate on that, and income to rent ratio. So if you have these qualifications, when you do get the leads, they're actually people who are qualified for it. And then we have a listing website for you, which is beautiful. And when a tenant responds to any of the 30 rental listing websites, and it's more than 30, but it's on average 30 based on what market you're in, then we auto respond to it and say, great, here's the showing calendar. When can you view it? And that way it's getting it faster. So if it's like today is a holiday, right? A Monday. If it's a holiday and you're not checking your phone, at least that tenant gets a response right away, can go through the pre-qual questions and get signed up for a showing. So all of that's built in directly into our interface. Awesome. So that's the marketing side of it. There's a lot to it. You get your own listing website. You can brand it however you want. But yeah, it works really well, and we've heard great things from customers about it.
Very cool. So the second question is tenant showings, and it sounds like you already just alluded to that. So tenants can actually book a time on a calendar. Just briefly, How does that process work?
Yes. So if they inquire through any of the listing websites, then they will get a response, assuming you have it set up. Some people might want to turn it off, but you can go ahead and say, here's the times and days I can show the property, and you can give us those pre-qualification questions. So in other words, if you say, I don't want any pets in this property, which I don't recommend, but some people say that, then you can go through and ask those pre-qualification questions. So if they don't qualify, you don't have to show up and waste your time showing it to them. We do with it, the reason we wanted to build it in-house versus use a third party was that user experience was super important to make it a really good user experience. So we wanted to make sure there was responses, reminders like 2 hours before the showing to text the tenant to remind them to show up. And if they are late or anything, to call this number, right? All of that built into it. And so that's why we built it in-house. I know there's also some great apps out there that do it, but it was really important for us to make sure that customer had a really good, consistent process.
I am absolutely loving that. So, I mean, we've already sort of touched on it, but the third thing is screening. So, I mean, obviously we can put some preliminary stuff up there on the listing, credit score, income ratio to rent. Do we as a landlord pay for screening? Is it included in the Hemlane price? Does that get passed on to the tenant? How does all of that work?
Yeah, it's pretty standard for the tenant to pay for the background and credit check. One thing we do is we make sure that the application is free. There's no additional charge on the platform for it. It's really important to not make cost a reason why a tenant can't apply. And then you can choose to say, I want the background and credit check right away, or I want to review the application before I do the background and credit check. We don't, because we're not a free property management software. We offer a free trial, but because we're not free, we're not trying to make money off of the background and credit checks, in other words. Yeah. So we're not upcharging on them. It's $30. It's the cheapest the credit bureaus will allow us to charge on them. In New York, it's actually $20. And so it's the cheapest price. We can't go below that. And again, our purpose is to make sure you get a qualified tenant in the property, not the person who's willing to pay the most for the background and credit check. So when they go through that process, when the tenant goes through it, you could review their application and say, hey, their income doesn't qualify. And we'll tell you that as well. I'm not even going to do the background and credit check, save them the $30. Let me just go ahead and tell them they're not qualified. So it's something that's really important to us, is not making it where the tenant feels like moving places is such a burden and so expensive for them. So it's the first thing. Then with the background and credit check, it's full comprehensive. So it's credit, eviction, criminal history, everything in there. Every state's laws and regulations are different, but we do have an algorithm based on your state law and regulations of whether you should accept or deny them based on your qualifications and the information in the application. That is not shared with the tenant. They get their entire report, but they don't get our recommendation. That is for you to view, and then you can make a decision of, do you want to move forward or not. As part of that algorithm we have, it's much more complex in the sense that we'll tell them, yes, this is like a conditional accept. You need to request additional security deposit, or this person needs a cosigner, something like that, to let you know, hey, you might be able to work with this person, or there might just be a flat out deny this person.
Perfect.
In there. So that's a process. And it's also a soft pull on credit, so it doesn't affect the tenant's credit score when you pull the report.
This is all great stuff. All right, so now we've got some tenants, we've screened them, we want to get ready to make an offer for the tenant. Does Hemlane have any sort of leases, legal advice built in, or do we have to go out to like third parties, software like a Rocket Lawyer or an Easy Landlord Forms, or go to like our state real estate website and buy a lease and then do paper signing or e-signatures? How is that set up at Hemlane?
Yeah, so we have some e-signatures built into Hemlane. We do have a partnership with Rocket Lawyer, direct partnership. So when you're on Hemlane, you can get your Rocket Lawyer login, and we pay that premium for both the on-call advice as well as the state-specific leases. Our goal is definitely to have those integrated into Hemlane, but one warning I would say, with a lot of property management softwares, is a lot of times the leases are old and not updated. Like if you look at the laws in Oregon and California and New York over the last year, they've changed a lot. And having the notifications of those updating and changing, it's something where you do need an in-house lawyer for all 50 states to be able to do. And so we have partnered initially with that, which has worked out really well, because then you can get that on-call legal advice as well.
Very good, very good. All right, so the next area is on, rent collection. I'm assuming, folks, you can have your tenants pay by credit card or ACH. If the tenant pays by credit card, do they pay that additional fee, or is that taken from us as the landlord, the 3% or whatever it is for credit card processing? How does all that work?
Yeah, so initially it's a bank-to-bank transfer, and you can enable credit card for whichever properties or whichever transactions you want. So we ask you that as part of the process of, do you want this to be paid with credit card? If you do say you want credit card, the next question we say is, do you want to pay it yourself, or do you want to have the tenant incur it? So that's all built into the platform, pretty easy. By default, we have it as the tenant has to pay it. We assume that's how most landlords want to go with it. But then another thing we do rent collection, security deposits. You can request and transfer money from anyone on the platform. One thing we really try to do, which I think is important, is education. Like, credit cards are so easy to dispute for a tenant. Yeah. Like, they literally, if you've called your credit card company to dispute something, you know how easy it is. Bank-to-bank transfers are a lot more secure. And so we do try to educate of, yes, you can offer this, and we have it completely built in for you, but here are the reasons why you might not want to accept that form of payment. And I think that's a huge differentiator is, again, we're not trying to make it where credit card is a way to get your tenants to pay you and fall behind on other bills. It's more of an education of, hey, for you, this might also not work out pretty well for you in the end.
Awesome. And then one of the questions that comes up a lot, and some other property management softwares do this and don't, do we have the ability to stop letting someone pay rent and turn it off? And also, does it restrict them on making partial payments on rent? And this is really from that eviction side, where if you do have that problem tenant and they're smart and they know they can do a partial payment, and then it delays the whole eviction process. So do we, as the landlord, have the ability to say, if rent's $1,000, they can't come in and pay $200?
Yep. So by default, we do all of that. By default, it says full payment only. You could, if you say I've got great tenants, 800 credit score, they're friends, and they want the convenience of splitting rent, you could enable partial payments, but we warn you about the risk of it. And so we have all of that built in. We also have it built in where you can stop, so you can shut it off at any time. You can suspend it, you can cancel it. It's actually interesting. We saw a lot of using the suspend button also during COVID. as well. We didn't build it for that. We built it for exactly what you mentioned of you're going through an eviction, you've served the notice, the timeline's done, you want to stop allowing the rent collection. And then the tenant, what's a huge advantage to the real estate investor is that the tenant literally doesn't have your bank information. They can't go to the bank and deposit the check or anything like that because they've been paying through Hemlane and there isn't a way for them to do it. We also have automatic late fees. So you can put automatic late fees in there as well.
Awesome. So, moving down the list is really with tenant communication. So, some folks still talk to their tenants with their normal phone and with their normal email. I and on the show we really recommend get a Google Voice number so they don't have to have your personal cell. But are we able to communicate with the tenants through Hemlane, and how does Hemlane have that process set up?
Yeah, great question. It's both text message as well as email by default to the tenants. To you, by default, it's only email. But a lot of people want to turn on the text message feature, which you absolutely can do. So when you go through the process and communicate with tenants, you could do an entire building. You could do just one tenant group at a time. You could do your whole portfolio if you have multiple properties. And then it sends it out with a text message notification. If a tenant responds, it obviously doesn't go to the whole building. It goes to you or the tenants just within their lease. All built within there. So you shouldn't need a Google Voice number from that perspective, because that's all that communication's built in. We see most tenants are on their phones, and then most landlords are on computers when we look at the numbers and how it's broken down.
Awesome. And then what about on a financial management standpoint? I mean, are we able to put in, obviously track our income from the properties, but log expenses and be able to pull a P&L at the end of the year to give our accountant? Can you just touch on what financial management reporting is in Hemlane for landlords?
Yeah, so we have all of that. We have security deposits with your accounts payable, obviously, income and expenses. You can track all of that in there. You can download the reports. I've never had an accountant come to us that I've heard from our team saying that it's not detailed enough. We'll have all the details, like when was it due, when was it paid, when did it hit your bank account, all that kind of stuff built into there for you. We are doing actually a huge revamp on the reports too, to make it even more robust. We have categories, obviously, for mortgage and insurance and in utilities. We're allowing you to have new custom categories. So that should be coming out this month, where you could choose what categories you want for your P&L.
That is awesome. All right. And then one of the other issues is on the sort of maintenance management side of things. Do we have the ability to let tenants put in maintenance requests? I know you have this whole third-party system. Do you have maintenance folks in your network, or can we have our handyman that we love actually start to, get communication through Hemlane? That way, as an example, if my tenant calls and puts in the request through Hemlane, it'll say, hey, this seems like it's under $200 or whatever threshold. It automatically goes to your preferred provider.
Yep, so we have thresholds, all that stuff. There's a couple of things actually on the maintenance and repair side that's I feel like Hemlane is really focused on and really built with the real estate investor in mind. And that's like the service, the technology-enabled operations team. So I'll go into that. But before I do, you can put all your service professionals in our system. And once a request comes in, you can click to assign and just assign it out to whichever service professional you want. In there, the really good thing is the service professional, like your handyman, your plumber, never has to log into our system. They'll get a text message and an email that says, here's a work order. Do you want to accept it? Can you, move forward with it? They can update it and track everything, but they have a very unique URL so that it gets back to you that they're the ones logging this. They're putting price estimates. They're putting scheduled dates. They have the schedule contact, which is the tenant, versus you're the bill to contact and coordinator. They have all of that built in. And so that's actually something that has been really helpful for people who self-manage, because they themselves don't have to go through, calling or doing emails. It's all in one system and everything's tracked.
I love it.
Yeah, that's a work order management. But one of the things I would say that real estate investors, when you talk to them, what they love about Hemlane is that we will actually pick up those repair calls for you, your emergency ones. And you have two options, to your point, Andrew. We can just go through your list of service professionals. Here's plumber one, call them first. They're first preferred. If they can't make it, call plumber two. Here's my emergency contact, but don't call him unless it's an emergency because he's expensive, right? So you can set all of that up in the system for us, and we'll communicate with the tenants. We'll start with troubleshooting. So we're not going to send someone out unless we can troubleshoot it. Then we understand the priority. Is this an emergency? Is this a high priority? Is it standard? Is it discretionary? Like maybe you don't want to do it and we're going to check with you before we send someone out. So all of that's built into there. And then our team will manage it end to end. And part of it, to your point, Andrew, is building up that service professional network where if you yourself say, I don't have someone, or try my people, and if my people don't work, use your own. We have our own network. And so like an example, because you had mentioned handiwork, is we're a partner to Ace Handyman Services. If anything goes wrong, and you know the Ace stores, they're fantastic. If anything goes wrong, we email their CEO of Ace Handyman Services, Andy Bell, and he makes sure everything is 5-star service, just like they really promote that in their stores as well. So we do have partners to make sure that we can get you the right people on the ground to help with your with the repairs your tenants need. And then we have thresholds with it. So if you say my threshold's $200, obviously if it's $201, we're not going to go forward until we get your approval on it. Awesome.
I mean, if you've ever been a landlord and had that call in the middle of the night, you don't want to deal with that. It's not the end of the world, but it's nice the fact that Hemlane can sort of help manage that process, and we can build those dollar thresholds in there and have the emergency contacts and service providers list. So I love this. I mean, the more and more I've been hearing about Hemlane, the more excited I get. But let's get to this last piece, and this is on pricing. So you mentioned there's a free trial, but what's the sort of minimum level? Is it a flat fee? Is it a per unit? Do you have different tiers of pricing? And I know this might be hard to convey all over sort of, voice and video. So in our show notes, we'll build out all of this for folks. That way, if they're interested, they can go to the show notes, see it, and then they can head over to Hemlane if they're interested in learning more. But how is the pricing actually set up?
Yeah, so when we thought of pricing and built it in, there were a couple of things that were super important to us. One, the price had to be something where your time, no matter who you are as a real estate investor. So take the 19-year-old who is making maybe now minimum wage at $15, but say it was like at $12, right? If you're doing that, we would save you more time than what you're doing, right, in order to make that price work, right? So that was really important to us because I think when you're just starting out and you're looking at your net operating income and your cash flow, like you really want to make sure that you have optimized your property management. So it starts at $30 a month. That's like annual 1 unit. The reason 1 unit is at that is because if your tenants call us, we'll talk to them on the phone. For you with 1 unit, if you have onboarding questions, we will onboard you 100% and answer all of your questions. And so that's that for the first one. Then it's just, if you're on an annual pricing plan, there's also monthly. It's just $2 per unit more. So if you think about it, it's only $32 for 2 units or $34 for 3. So it suddenly gets a lot more cost effective from that perspective. Awesome. For those who say, hey, I'm out of state or I don't want to manage the property myself, we obviously have leasing agents and then our 24/7 repair coordination team. That starts at, if you're on an annual plan, it's $12 a unit to get the 24/7 repair coordination where your tenants call us. Obviously, if you want to use our service professionals, it's a bit more, but we also, keeping in mind that 24 hours, how do we make sure that there's someone who can pick up that phone? They are a repair coordinator. They're not someone overseas who doesn't understand how to troubleshoot a request or turn off a main valve. Like, it's our team making sure to go through that process. And so that was super important to us as well, in building it and making sure that we had oversight over the entire repair coordination process.
So I want to stop you there for just a second. And I
Yeah.
mean, we sort of glossed over it, but I really want to call this out. Like, I bought my first property at 20. Now at 38, I've got tons of experience, and I can't tell you how many times I've had a call from a tenant, and it was literally a breaker had popped, and
Just
all they had to
flipping,
do
yeah.
was flip it back
Flip
over.
the
And
switch.
if you call that electrical or you call that plumber, you know, a lot of times a minimum call is $75, $100,
Yeah.
and that's a cheap plumber during the day, and that's if it's not after hours. So literally, just having that repair coordination is a cheap fee when they can say,
totally.
"Hey, well, walk over to that breaker box," and like, well, that just saved me $100 or $200 on a 10 p.m. service call. So I love that. I just wanted to stop you to call that out for folks to say, look, because a lot of times I think we get too frugal and too cheap and don't realize our time is more valuable. And I just had to call that out. So sorry, keep on
Well,
going.
actually, Andrew, I think that's a good point. I've had from our account management team, people forward me emails or tell me about calls they've had where a lot of times when real estate investors get started, like I'm not even as good as our repair team at troubleshooting. That's all they do all day long. Like they understand, they have their entire script of everything to do, and they are subject matter experts on just repair coordination. So they know exactly how to handle everything and go through the check boxes, even though they know it like firsthand, like they've themselves are very handy. But with it, we've had a lot of customers come to us and say, oh my gosh, I am so glad for you guys. Because usually it's a person with one rental property. They have their first tenant, their tenant puts in a request, and we say, okay, did you try X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z? Here's 4 videos for you to look through. Make sure you go through this stuff. And it's not an emergency. If it's an emergency, we're calling them. But in this case, we're sending them a text message and an email saying, here are the things to try. Once you've done that stuff, please let us know. And if that's all done, we're going to send someone out, right away, get this scheduled and dispatched. But we've had real estate investors say, well, we need to get someone out there right now. I need to make sure that they have a 5-star experience. And then the tenant will respond and be like, oh yeah, I did just flip that breaker or flip the reset button or click the GFI. And like that worked. Thanks so much. And then the investor comes back to us like, oh my gosh, you did just save me a $75 service call rate. And so we really do try to do that. And our responses are really fast. If anything comes in, it's within 2 hours that we're getting back to them. But a lot of times it's with that troubleshooting steps. I mean, it's even the same with like doorbells. Like my doorbell's broken. A lot of times, like there are certain things that you can do to fix that, right? Where you do not have to send someone out. But there's complex cases with it, Andrew, because there are certain cases where they say my light bulb's out. And the question is, okay, well, how high are the ceilings? Did you just move in? Because like, for example, if they just moved in and the light bulb's out, that's a problem with the leasing and the move-in process. All those light bulbs should have been replaced. Or if it's a 20-foot ceiling, the tenant should not be on a ladder. That's a liability waiting to happen. So
even a normal handyman might not have, a ladder to reach the 20-foot ceiling. So
or the insurance.
All,
exactly. And so some cases get more complex than like you would think, but our team knows that that's all they do every day and they love it, right? Like they are subject matter experts just at repair coordination. And I think that's something that really differentiates as we've built up that team, that really differentiates it.
Awesome. And then, one question I had was you said this network of nationwide folks that can help with leasing. Is that included in that sort of premium tier, or do you guys just manage that and then there's sort of a lease up fee that gets paid out to that realtor? Can you explain sort of how that works and what the pricing is in there?
Yeah, so that's a lease up fee. Every leasing agent charges a different price. So it's a different price to get that. And it's heavily dependent on your property and the area. We're actually not allowed to price set. And we've heard that a couple times from the Bureau of making sure you guys don't even recommend prices to the agents because you could be considered price setting for leasing. of what they are. But we work with, we're property management partner to RE/MAX, approved supplier there. We are working with California Association of Realtors, Georgia Association of Realtors, a lot of the associations, and making sure that we know who does leasing, who has experience, and how good are they. And then actually it's built up from our platform a lot too, because there's people on there who use it. Realtors use it. They love it because they're like, great, I can use this to manage properties. I don't have to do repair coordination. We get it that way as well. So what we do is we typically connect you to 2 or 3 agents. You get to interview them. So we've already interviewed and pre-vetted them. Like, we're not going to send you someone who we don't think is going to get your property leased within 30 days. I mean, we're obviously aiming for 15 to 20 days for a signed lease, and make sure that they are that high quality for you. Keeping in mind that a lot of our investors don't want to do the turnover coordination, don't want to do certain things. So they would do that. And then you get to choose who you want to work with on the platform. So then you connect with them. You have 100% access to everything. So their responses to tenants, the background and credit check, you can see all of that in our system. But the leasing agent is doing the work, going out to the property, showing the property, following up with the tenants, seeing what the pipeline looks like for you. And then after every time an agent goes out, we actually ask the real estate investor to review the leasing agent. That is all kept on our back end. We never publish it. A lot of our leasing agents you won't even find on our platform. They're all on our back end of who's the best. And then we're keeping those notes to know, this person has 5 stars 20 times. We're going to be recommending them first to everyone.
Awesome.
In that area type thing. And we're also tracking the data. How many days did it take them to get the place leased? Did they do price adjustments? Were they active with that? How long did it take for them to respond to a tenant question about could they have a cosigner? All of those types of things built into that process. But really trying to make sure that you don't have to be there for your property, right? You have the people that you need, from repair coordinators to leasing agents, to make it a success for you.
I love that option is there and it's all integrated through your system. So, you can take advantage of all of Hemlane, and maybe you want to do all the showings and then life changes and you have a kid or something and you just can't do those showings anymore, and you can just use that add-on option through Hemlane. I mean, this is fantastic. I mean, I love what you've been doing with Hemlane. I mean, but before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests a set of final 6 questions. Are you ready for them?
I think so. Hopefully.
Awesome. What's your favorite personal finance-related resource? So blog, book, podcast, whatever it may be, personal finance-related.
I was going to say Planet Money, but I don't know if that's personal finance. So I do really love, when I think about how to become successful, right? You have to understand business and markets and stuff like that. So I think, and then you're always balancing it with your personal life. So I really do love the book. It's an old book, but Thomas Friedman's book, Lexus and the Olive Tree. It really tells you about having a balance, I think, with culture and work and driving money and growth, and allows you to really think about what your impact is on the world.
Awesome. All right, so question number 2, what is your favorite real estate related resource? So blog, book, podcast, other than maybe Hemlane's blog.
And yours, Andrew, your podcast. It would, the other one that I really like is One Rental at a Time. They do financial news for 15 seconds on Michael Zuber's show. It's financial news, YouTube, of what's happening with the consumer and how that affects real estate and real estate investing. So I've been listening to that every morning as well.
Awesome. All right, so question number 3, what has been your favorite travel destination so far?
Well, it's a place I go every year. It's called Mombasa, Kenya. We go every year. We're going for 2 months this summer, or a month and a half this summer. And it's my favorite place in the world. I think the east coast of Africa is very undiscovered, and one of my favorite places in the world.
So how'd you end up at Mombasa? Because this is, so I used to do aid work in Kibera, the main slum of Nairobi, Kenya.
No way.
I never got to go down to Mombasa. I wanted to take that Mombasa Express, that old British train car from the, 50s or 60s from Nairobi down. But how did this end up becoming your favorite place?
Oh wow! So we could talk about Kenya forever. So that they've actually just revamped that train or like renovated the train. It's really nice. Yeah, it's really nice now. My husband's actually from Nairobi, Kenya. So he was there. If you've ever been to Carnivore, the restaurant, maybe when you were working there, that's his parents' restaurant.
Really?
Yeah, so they're in Nairobi, Mombasa. We go to Malindi, Lamu, all over the place there.
Oh, that is so cool. Such an awesome connection. All right. So obviously this might be the next one. What's next on your travel vacation list? I mean, obviously you're going to go back to Kenya. Is there anything else in the works outside of that?
Yeah, so we're not traveling as much as we used to because of COVID. So we're definitely going to do a trip to Kenya this summer. We're also going to Florida this summer. My husband and I are actually hoping to buy an investment property in Tampa. That's our goal as well. But we're going to be headed out there for a family trip in June.
Very cool. All right. So the fifth question, what is your biggest bucket list item that you have not accomplished yet?
I don't know why we haven't accomplished this, but we really want to do, and it's very unique to San Francisco. We want a day where we wake up, we live here on Ocean Beach, which is a nice surf break. We want to wake up and surf in the morning and then drive up to Tahoe and ski for the rest of the day, getting to the slopes around 11, be able to ski all day, and drive back home afterwards.
That sounds so awesome. You got to work that in here this year. That would be really cool. All right. So the sixth and final question is, what is your favorite life hack?
Favorite life hack? Well, this, I don't know if it's necessarily a life hack, but something I do to make sure that I mentally am ready for the day. I actually always sleep in my workout clothes. And then from there, always make sure I work out, make sure I get out, do yoga as well, and get ready for the day.
No, that's actually a really cool life hack. As soon as you wake up, no excuses. You're already ready for the workout.
Exactly.
Look, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing more about you and the Hemlane family and how y'all are out there as a resource to help real estate investors. You know, if folks want to learn more about you, you know, what's the best place for them to find you? Any social media channels? Obviously, the Hemlane website. Where's the best place for folks to look you up?
Yeah, so you can look me up, I guess on Facebook as well. The actual easiest way to connect with me if you're getting into real estate investing, in-house hacking, and I'm trying to figure out the next thing to do, or there's something on the management side you have questions on, email is the best for me. I'm the best with email. Everyone has a preferred method. So it's Dana, D-A-N-A, at Hemlane, Hemlane.com.
Okay, folks, you do realize the CEO of a property management company just gave out her personal email. I mean, if that's not enough to convince you to check out Hemlane, I don't know what is. Look, it's been fantastic having you on. Thank you so much. I mean, it's been a blast. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Andrew, for having me.